Good afternoon. Now, obviously, 20 minutes is not enough time to show how I would fully implement the district's learning-centered model. So what I'd like to do is take this time to show you how I would implement the first component of the model. And the first component of the model is creating the learning environment. What does the learning environment look like? A description of the learning environment. So that's what I want to do. Now I'm going to use the same example that's in the model. And the example in the model is creating a narrative paper. So here's what it looks like. The first step in creating a narrative paper is what we do before the unit starts, before the unit, pre-unit. So pre-unit, and I would suggest we do this starting with the YAG. The YAG is the year at a glance. This is even before school happens. We get those master teachers, those great educational minds together, and we sit down and we create a planning calendar. Now, in the model, it says 3 weeks. If I could suggest 3 weeks could be the perfect time we need, but we don't know that until we get those great minds together, because here's what I've learned. What worked 2 years ago may not work 2 years from now. So it's important to continually have these meetings to have teacher input and say, how long does it really take, based on where they're coming from, for students to create a narrative paper, a narrative essay. And if it's 3 weeks, perfect. But if it's not 3 weeks, then we need to adjust based on teacher input, because we have master teachers. So here's what we do. We have to answer the question, what does it look like? What does the learning environment look like? So in the PLC, we ask these questions. What do we want them to know? How are we going to get them to know it? What do we do for those who don't get it? What do we do for those who do get it? So we have to answer those questions. And in the midst of answering those questions, we create a dialogue. And part of that dialogue is, what are the common misconceptions? Students that don't write good narrative essays, why don't they write them? What are the major misconceptions that students have about a narrative paper? What do they constantly make mistakes on? We also want to know, what do they do well? So these questions will be asked at those PLCs. Also, what are we going to do for those that don't achieve? For the students that don't achieve this, we can't just leave them behind. We have to come up with a plan to recycle these learning objectives, specifically with those students, to get them on board with everyone else. So we have to come up with the RTI, a response to intervention. What is our plan for the students who don't grasp with everyone else? Like I said before, we also have to come up with a plan for those who grasp it early. Those kids who, even before we teach it, they've already mastered the learning objective. What are we going to do for those kids? Because here's what I found. Those two groups I just talked about, those kids who get it early and those kids who get it late, those are the likely behavioral problems. The kids that don't get it, sometimes they become behavioral problems because they want to hide the fact that they can't get it. The kids that get it early, sometimes they become behavioral problems because they are just plain old bored. So what is our response to those two groups? Those who get it, those who don't get it. And we do that for everyone. Now, while school is in session, we answer these questions in our PLCs. And in our PLCs, the conversation may go something like this. You'll have a master teacher say, here's what I've tried in the past, here's what's worked well. And you'll have teachers saying, okay, what did you do? How did you teach this last time? And one teacher may say, well, I explained that a narrative is simply a story, and she'll go through her quick teach, and then he or she will talk about, well, I gave kids the same prompt, and I said, you create your narrative. Another teacher may say, I told kids, tell me about your favorite summer activity, and write a narrative on it. A third teacher may have a totally different prompt. I'm not saying there's a right and wrong way, but I want to get as many ideas out there as possible, specifically for those new teachers, because I want them to know there is more than one way to skin a cat. And for those old teachers that think the way they do it is the only way to do it, we can come back and say, well, you know what? There are other ways that have proven as effective, and in some cases even more effective. At these PLCs, we look at prior data, and we look at what did most people miss. In this component, in this lesson right here, creating a narrative essay, what are the components, what are the learning objectives most kids got wrong? And if we have data from prior years, we want to know which teachers really had students to excel in the learning objectives that were most problematic. Let me say that again. Which teachers had students excel in the learning objectives that were most problematic? Well, I want to know, what did you do to cause your teachers to excel? Because if I can figure out what you did to cause your teachers to excel, then maybe I can employ that same strategy and my students will excel as well. So all this happens before we even step into the classroom. All right, part 2 is the pre-assessment. In the pre-assessment, we want writing samples, or we want artifacts. Now, we can do this one of two ways. Every kid should have a Google folder, and in that Google folder, that student should have writing artifacts from prior units, even from prior years. That Google folder can travel with that student for the totality of his high school career. So it's real simple. We'll have every child share their Google folder with us at the beginning of the year. We simply go in that Google folder and we look up their narrative essays and see where they are, and we allow them to see where they are. While doing that, we also share with them the rubric, and we say, listen guys, when we say writing a narrative essay, here's exactly what we're looking for. And we go through the rubric. So we're not trying to trick kids. We're trying to create mastery. And so we let the kids know what exactly what we expect. And so in doing so, we have clarified expectations. Clear expectations create winners because they know exactly what to expect. If we don't have a writing example, we'll do a quick write, and we'll go right back to some of those prompts that teachers gave kids before. Tell me about your favorite summertime adventure. Tell me about your favorite superhero. Tell me about your favorite movie. I mean, there's no wrong way to do it, but we can create examples. We can create artifacts those ways. All right, so now that we've done that, we go from that pre-assessment to during the unit. This is my favorite part. All right, so during the unit, and I'm big in differentiated instruction, and so there will obviously have to be a quick teach. But here's how I would suggest it. When the kids come in, there might be a picture on the wall. There might be a manipulative that kids can touch and pass around the room. There might be a video playing without words, a minute long, and the teacher, while they're either looking at the picture, passing around the artifact, or looking at the video without words for about 1 minute, the teacher is reading his or her own personal narrative on whatever the manipulative is. Whether it's the picture, whether it's the manipulative, whether it's the video. The teacher is reading their own narrative. What are they doing? They are modeling what we want the students to do. That's what we're doing. So we have that going on. Let me cut this off. I didn't realize it was on. So we have that going on. Now, after we've done that, we ask the kids, can you give me a narrative on this picture? Can you give me a narrative on this manipulative? Can you give me a narrative on this video? Who can do it? All right, you have 1 minute, ready, go. Let them model it. Because remember, kids will oftentimes give you pushback if they don't think they can do it. And oftentimes kids don't think they can read well, don't think they can write well, but they can explain. So let them explain it in their words, and that's okay. The next step, we're going to differentiate the learning environment. We've had them in desks. Now we're going to switch and put them in small groups. When we put them in small groups, we're going to say, okay, in every group, I need a color. I need a blue, I need a red, I need a green, I need an orange. Pick your colors right now. Let them pick the colors. Then the teacher will say, okay, blue, you are the narrator. Orange, you are the protagonist. Green, you are the antagonist. Assign a role to each person. Now, if you notice, I used academic vocabulary. Somebody's going to say, well, what's a protagonist? My answer as a teacher, ask someone in your group. Kids grasp academic vocabulary when we use it in its proper context. So now we have each kid in the group, and what we're going to tell them is this. All right, I want you, this group, the narrator, you have to come up with the narrative, and everyone else is going to act it out. I'm going to give you 2 to 3 minutes to do this. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever it is. Give them a definite amount of time, though. And 1, 2, 3, ready, go. I'm walking around the room or doing what I call rounding, and I'm making sure they are thinking, they are collaborating, they are creating. Because here's what the world needs. The world needs thinkers, collaborators, and creators, and problem solvers, I might add. And so we're using creating a narrative, learning objective to create thinkers, collaborators, problem solvers. That's what we're doing. We give them 2 or 3 minutes, and as we're going from station to station, if they're off task, we say, come on, you only have 1 more minute. If they're on task, we're committing them. Man, that is a great job. This is going to be great. So after the 3 minutes, we say stop. Let's say we have 6 groups. We're going to say groups 1 and 2 over here. Groups 3 and 4 back there. Groups 5 and 6, I want you over there. Groups 1, 3, and 5, you have 1 minute to act out your narrative to groups 2, 4, and 6. Ready? Go. And let them act out their narrative. Listen, we are having fun. There is nothing wrong with having fun in an academic setting. I would suggest that an academic setting is much more productive when it's fun. Now, it can't always be fun, but when it can be fun, allow it to be fun. And here's a case where we can have fun with this. So they're acting it out and they're messing up, and it's all okay because they're thinking, they're collaborating, they're creating. After the minute is over, we say stop. Everybody sit down at your paper, at your desk. And then we're going to say this. All right, I want everybody, we're going to take 2 minutes, and I want you to write a narrative about what you saw. Groups 1, 3, and 5. If what you did is not what should have happened, you write the narrative of what should have happened. Groups 2, 4, and 6, you write a narrative of what happened. If it wasn't very good, you write a narrative of how you thought it ought to have been acted out. So now everybody, again, is thinking, problem solving, creating. Those are the skills we need for the 21st century workforce. The writing, we're going around right now. I'm going around. I have a pen in my pen and pad, and I'm writing down. If I see kids using transitions, I want to write that kid's name down to remind everyone else this kid is using great transitions. If I see great examples, I'm writing that down. If I see kids struggling, I want to write that down too. I want to know why they're struggling, what they're struggling with. All right? Now we've done that. Okay, we're going to go back in our groups. Groups 2, 4, 6. You guys are going to act out yours narrative to groups 1, 3, and 5. You have a minute, ready, go. They act theirs out. We do the exact same thing. I give everyone another minute or two to write a narrative. We look over the narratives, and then I'm going to say red and green, you get together. Blue and yellow, you get together. Red and blue, read the narrative to your other colors. Then flip it. Who had a really good narrative? We're going to read it to the class. What made this a good narrative? We're all going to give examples so everyone sees what a good narrative looks like. After we finish, I'm going to say, I'll tell you what, get back into your original groups, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes to clean up your story, clean up your narrative, to act it out one more time. Let them act it out one more time. Let them have fun. Let them think. Let them problem solve. Let them collaborate. Then I'm going to say, all right, group 1, you have a minute. Get in front of the class, act out your narrative. What did we notice about the narrative? Have a discussion. Then groups 2, group 3, group 4, group 5, group 6. Then I'm going to say, all right, which narrative was the funniest? Which narrative was the saddest? Which narrative was the most serious? I want you to now write a narrative about your favorite story. Tell me about that narrative from your perspective, from your point of view. Let me back up. If kids are hesitant, here's what you say. I'm telling you, here's what creates creativity and collaboration more than any other phrase I know. I want to see which narrative is the funniest. I want to see which narrative is the best. Create competition. Competition creates engagement, creates creativity, it creates students working together. So anytime students are stagnant, I always teach teachers, how can we make this a competition? It just creates an energy. Now, do you notice how many transitions I have in the class? That's very purposeful. The more transitions you have, the more times you hit the reset button. It's important to hit the reset button because students' attention spans just aren't very long. So when we change the learning environment, when we went to a whole group environment, to a small group environment, we hit the reset button. When we gave them 2 minutes and then discussed, we hit the reset button. When we gave them 2 more minutes, we hit the reset button. When we had groups 1 and 2 collaborate, we hit the reset button. What am I saying? Hit the reset button as many times as you possibly can. Ways to hit the reset button, have a time activity. It's over, we're on to something next. Differentiate not just the instructional strategy, but the learning environment. Go from whole group to small group. We didn't discuss this here, but we can go station rotation, have groups working together, have a group come to the front. These are ways to reset that button and increase the attention span. Now, we're going to get to the last couple. The summative assessment. Oh, let's back up because I didn't talk about the formative assessment. Now, while I was walking around monitoring kids, I was doing what I call on-the-spot assessments. And on-the-spot assessment is when I'm looking and I'm making corrections as we go along, because the purpose is not to show them what they do wrong, it's to show them how to make it right, how to get your writing better. And here's the deal, guys. We don't wait to figure out how kids are going to perform. Before we give a test, we should already know how kids are going to perform. The way we know how kids are going to perform is through those on-the-spot and formative assessments. So at the end of the class, when I said, all right, everyone write a narrative about your favorite story, I'm going to look, and here's what I said. When I say write them, we're going to put them on those Chromebooks. There's a folder that says Dr. Collins' class, and they have access to it. Just share it with me. Their documents are already in there. They're timestamped. So if they didn't put them in that period, it doesn't count unless we get together. So here we're using our Google technology because we do have a one-to-one initiative. So that's a good use of technology, by the way. If I could just take a sidebar, simply using a PowerPoint, that's not a good use of technology. That's just taking what we put on the chalkboard and put it on not even on a video board. Just put it on another board anyway. But having kids write their papers, putting it directly into our Google Drive, that's a great use of technology because we have it right now. We can grade it. We can give not instant feedback, but we can give fairly quick feedback. We can get those grades. There are no more losses of paper. There's no more misplaced anything. You either turned it in or you didn't. How many times have you had kids say, I turned it in, the teacher didn't get it? Well, if you put it in my Google Drive like you're supposed to, I got it and it's timestamped. We have eliminated that problem. All right. And again, I have my little paper here. I just want to make sure I hit the main points. So now the summative assessment. This is something else I really like too. In the summative assessment, what we do, we disaggregate the data. So we take this data and we actually, I'm sorry, not the data, we haven't got the data here. So the summative assessment is when we give the test. So we go back and we say, remember guys, this is what a good narrative looks like. We might even put two on the board. Which one's good? Why is that one good? Remember, here are the learning objectives we're testing for. Here is the rubric. We're reminding them and we're showing them mastery, showing them what good looks like. Then we give the assessment. We take that assessment, that formative assessment, and here's what I like to do. I like to create competition. So I might not say this is first period. I might say these are my rockets, these are my stars, these are the moons, these are the suns. It's different class periods, and it might even be different teachers' classes. And we say the suns performed at 80% master. They were green. The moons were yellows. But we perform a way to create competition because here's what I found. What students won't do to learn the content, they'll do in the name of competition. There are students who will pay attention because they want to win. I don't care why you pay attention as long as you pay attention. I don't care why you learn the content as long as you learn the content. So that's our summative assessment. We take that and we create competition. The final component is how we analyze the data or the student mastery data system. I'm in Texas, of course. We use a system called Eduphoria, and there are several systems. Eduphoria allows us to disaggregate the data by learning objective. That is powerful, and here's why. Because again, we can add more data. We can find out what are the common misconceptions. And then once we find them out, we can sit down in our POCs and ask ourselves, okay, why aren't kids getting this right? Because here's what I found out. Experts are experts. They don't have those misconceptions, and oftentimes they forget what they are. So when we can analyze the data and identify those common misconceptions, we can then address those common misconceptions. We can even take them back to the classroom and say, guys, these are our common misconceptions. Why are they our common misconceptions? What are we as teachers doing wrong here? And let the students teach us how to teach it better. Now that's really empowering students. That's powerful. Here's another thing it does. If a teacher teaches one better than everyone else, a learning objective, we can ask that teacher, how are you teaching that learning objective? Teach us how to teach it. If we have no clue, well, now I know how to spend our professional development dollars. So that's how I take that first component which is what does the classroom environment look like? How do we create it from start to finish? That's what we have here. If I were the next assistant superintendent, I would bring these types of concepts, these types of communications, these types of professional developments to Carson City. Thank you so much for having me. And I always end like this. I'm a little bit different. I'm high energy. I'm a former coach. So I would say this to the teachers I was talking to. Does this make sense? Can we implement it? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? If the answer is yes, I would end it like this. Give me 2 claps and a Ric Flair.